at the forefront of politics.
Our enemy is Trump. He is the enemy. We got to unite. If we're not a united party, we lose to Trump.
On the front lines of activism.
There's certain fights, if we don't engage, they win. This is a fundamental question of who we are.
And delivering your daily dose of comedy.
Donald Trump, when he had his physical, they had his blood pressure, and mine is higher than his. Oh. And the irony is mine is higher because of him.
From the blue wave.
We flipped. Enough seats to take control of the House. We control the House.
To 2020 and beyond. This is the Dean Obeidallah Show on Sirius XM Progress, Channel 127.
And welcome to the Dean Obeidallah Show, brothers and sisters. Tuesday, December 10th. I'm Dean Obeidallah, as always hoping to be your MBFF. I'm the needy Muslim guy. On Twitter at Dean Obeidallah, I'm there for you. Obviously, big news today. Impeachment articles have been released. We're going to talk about that. Thank you, my friend Matt. Just handed me this just in from Matt. And I'm kidding, Matt. The producer gave me my sheet of clips. Daily reminder. I'll probably only do this weekly, but I want to do it again today. The Trump administration right now is in federal court in the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals fighting to end you and your family's coverage for pre-existing medical conditions, allow insurers to charge women more than men for the same coverage, and all the other benefits of the ACA. That's what they're doing right now. And it's time the 2020 Democrats remind America what is going on. Let's talk articles of impeachment. Today, history was made. Donald Trump will be, although we didn't have the vote formally, but we know what's coming, Donald Trump will be the third president in the history of this republic impeached by the House of Representatives. And today, 2 articles of impeachment were introduced. I have the draft of them now. They could be marked up. They could be tweaked. There'll be a vote in House Judiciary. First count, abuse of power. Second one, obstruction of Congress. And I want to play some clips from the announcement of these articles of impeachment because this is a history today. This is history being made in front of all of us. And time, like today, we look back at the Clinton impeachment or the Nixon beginning of the impeachment process there. And I go, oh, that was interesting. That was history. That took place at that moment. It summed up something that was going on. Well, this sums up where we are today. On the articles themselves, what Democrats have chosen to put in them, and the reaction of Republicans. So here's Gerald Nadler, the chair of the House Judiciary Committee, where the next hearings will be on a vote on these 2 articles of impeachment. And simply put, by the way, there's 2 articles of impeachment right now. If a simple majority votes for either one in the House Judiciary, it goes to the full House for a vote. There, if a simple majority votes for it, Donald Trump is formally impeached on either or both articles, and then it's sent to the Senate for a trial. The way the Senate rules are written as of now, they've been the same since 1986, there is no discretion on behalf of Mitch McConnell, nor on the Democrats, because Democrats cannot say, hey, we impeached Trump, now we're not going to have a trial in the Senate. I've heard some media pundits say that on air. Clear they have not read the Senate rules from 1986 that still are in effect today. How you can do it. It automatically triggers a trial in the Senate. That's the way it goes. You can contain the trial. You can have a motion to put the trial aside. That'll be Republicans controlling that. So let's hear some of the historic clips. Here's Gerald Nadler, House Judiciary Chair, today announcing articles of impeachment. Here's clip number 2, please.
Over the last several months, the investigative committees of the House have been engaged in an impeachment inquiry into President Donald Trump's efforts to solicit foreign interference in the 2020 elections. Efforts that compromised our national security and threatened the integrity of our elections. Throughout this inquiry, he has attempted to conceal the evidence from Congress and from the American people. Our president holds the ultimate public trust. When he betrays that trust and puts himself before a country, he endangers the Constitution, he endangers our democracy, and he endangers our national security. The framers of the Constitution prescribed a clear remedy for presidents who so violate their oath of office. That is the power of impeachment. Today, in service to our duty to the Constitution and to our country, the House Committee on the Judiciary is introducing 2 articles of impeachment charging the President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, with committing high crimes and misdemeanors.
And then Chairman Nadler went on to outline the first article of impeachment and touch on the second. And I want to play this. Here's clip 3, please.
The first article is for abuse of power. It is an impeachable offense for the president to exercise the powers of his public office to obtain an improper personal benefit while ignoring or injuring the national interest. That is exactly what President Trump did when he solicited and pressured Ukraine to interfere in our 2020 presidential election, thus damaging our national security, undermining the integrity of the next election, and violating his oath to the American people. These actions, moreover, are consistent with President Trump's previous invitations of foreign interference in our 2016 presidential election. And when he was caught, when the House investigated and opened an impeachment inquiry, President Trump engaged in unprecedented, categorical, and indiscriminate defiance of the impeachment inquiry. This gives rise to the second article of impeachment for obstruction of Congress.
So those are the two articles right there. Obstruction of Congress and abuse of power. And I want to play a little bit of Adam Schiff, House Intel Chair, who was up there with Speaker Pelosi and Carolyn Maloney, who's now Oversight Committee Chair, and other chairs. Richard Neal from House Ways and Means was up there at the same time. Here's Adam Schiff, and Adam Schiff is so impressive, even just laying this out. And that's why, again, this is why Republicans say we want Adam Schiff to testify, and Trump wants him, because in their view, if they make Adam Schiff a fact witness, which he's not, then he cannot serve as the lead prosecutor in the Senate trial. They are very, very concerned about Adam Schiff. Not that he'll get an actual conviction in the Senate, because this is all about changing public opinion. It's not about changing Republicans. You're not going to change many votes in the House or the Senate. We all know that. This is about changing public opinion. And they fear Adam Schiff so much, they've made him the number one target and enemy here. It's not founded in reality or based on rules. It's just lies, but that's what the GOP is about. Here's Adam Schiff today, clip 4.
The framers of the Constitution recognized that someday a president might come to office who would abuse that office, betray the public trust, and undermine national security to secure foreign help in his reelection, and who would seek to abrogate the power of Congress to hold him accountable. They recognized this danger, and they prescribed a remedy, and that remedy is impeachment. It is an extraordinary remedy, and one that I've been reluctant to recommend until the actions of President Trump gave Congress no alternative. We stand here today because the president's continuing abuse of his power has left us no choice. To do nothing would make ourselves complicit in the president's abuse of his high office, the public trust, and our national security.
I love that last line. To do nothing would make us complicit. That's why the Democrats are charged to do this. There's no discussion. There's no debate. There's not, should we censor him or not? That's ridiculous. You have to impeach him. This is what you're charged in the Constitution to do when you are faced with this overwhelming evidence of an executive, a chief executive, who has violated his oath, the Constitution, and committed high crimes and misdemeanors. And here's Adam Schiff detailing some of Trump's wrongs, which this is part of the opening statement you're going to hear in the Senate trial when we get to there in January. And I think you'll hear it from Adam Schiff. Here's clip 5.
The president's misconduct is as simple and as terrible as this. President Trump solicited a foreign nation, Ukraine, to publicly announce investigations into his opponent and a baseless conspiracy theory promoted by Russia to help his reelection campaign. President Trump abused the power of his office by conditioning 2 official acts to get Ukraine to help his reelection: the release of hundreds of millions of dollars in military aid that nation desperately needed, and a White House meeting with an ally trying to fend off Russian aggression. In so doing, he undermined our national security and jeopardized the integrity of our next election. And he does so still. The evidence of the president's misconduct is overwhelming and uncontested. And how could it not be when the president's own words on July 25th, "I would like you to do us a favor, though," lays so bare his intentions, his willingness to sacrifice the national security for his own personal interests.
And that sounds like the opening statement of a prosecutor, because that's what it is. Adam Schiff served as a federal prosecutor before he was elected to Congress. That's why they are so worried about Adam Schiff. He, to me, is the most impressive House Democrat in terms of being able to prosecute Donald Trump in a way that not only gets the facts out, but is compelling. He brings a gravitas to it that I find very powerful. And last thing, here's Adam Schiff, and I'm only playing this because a lot of people had questions about why are House Democrats not waiting for the courts to decide on Don McGahn and the testimony of others, maybe John Bolton and Jesse Eisenberg with the National Security Council is really important. We should hear from him. And this is his reasoning. You could disagree with it, but I want you to hear what Adam Schiff said about why they're not waiting. Clip number 6.
The argument, why don't you just wait, amounts to this. Why don't you just let him cheat in one more election? Why not let him cheat just one more time? Why not let him have foreign help just one more time? That is what that argument amounts to. The president's misconduct goes to the heart of whether we can conduct a free and fair election in 2020. It is bad enough for a candidate to invite foreign interference in our political process, but it is far more corrosive for a president to do so and to abuse his power to make it so. Despite everything we have uncovered, the president's misconduct continues to this day, unapologetically and right now.
So Adam Schiff makes it clear waiting would be an invitation to Donald Trump to commit more wrongs and misconduct. And I will address some of this because I'm very happy on one level, but I'm also going to be blunt. I am not happy with something else. But let's look at there's 2 articles of impeachment. To remind people, in case you're interested in history, Bill Clinton, there were 4 articles of impeachment in the House Judiciary Committee that they drafted. In that scenario, only 2 were voted and got a majority vote in the House Judiciary Committee and went to a full vote in the House. So from there, they went from 4 to 2. In this case, 4 passed the committee, only 2 passed the full House, because even Republicans peeled away from 2 of the 4. So Bill Clinton was actually tried on 2 articles of impeachment. I would imagine with the Democrats, both articles will pass, barring something completely unexpected in the House Judiciary Committee. Article 1 is extremely detailed. Article 1 is all about Donald Trump's actions with the Ukraine, though. It is some laser focus on that. It talks about using the powers of his office. President Trump solicited the interference of a foreign government, Ukraine, in the 2020 United States presidential election. He did so through a scheme or course of conduct that including soliciting the government of Ukraine to publicly announce investigations that would benefit his reelection, harm the election prospects of a political opponent, and influence a 2020 United States presidential election to his advantage. President Trump also sought to pressure the government of Ukraine to take these steps by conditioning official United States government acts of significant value to Ukraine on its public announcement of the investigations. And it went through and detailed a bunch of different specific acts that Donald Trump has done. And, it's compelling to read this. There's one part I'd like to read because it reminds me very similar to what we read in Clinton and Nixon articles. It said, in all this, President Trump abused the powers of the presidency by ignoring and injuring national security and other vital national interests to obtain an improper personal and political benefit. He also betrayed the nation by abusing his high office to enlist a foreign power in corrupting democratic elections. And it concludes, wherefore President Trump, by such conduct, has demonstrated that he will remain a threat to national security and the Constitution if allowed to remain in office, and has acted in a manner grossly incompatible with self-governance and the rule of law. President Trump thus warrants impeachment and trial, removal from office, and disqualification to hold and enjoy any office of honor, trust, or profit under the United States. Those are essentially almost the same words that close the articles of impeachment against Richard Nixon and Bill Clinton. Article 2 is obstruction of Congress. Simply couple paragraphs here that jumped out at me that I thought were very compelling. Donald J. Trump has directed the unprecedented, categorical, and indiscriminate defiance of subpoenas issued by the House of Representatives pursuant to its sole power of impeachment. President Trump has abused the powers of the presidency in a manner offensive to and subversive of the Constitution. And it goes through a long litany of acts he's done in blocking people to testify and not giving documents. It has this great paragraph. It says, in the history of the Republic, no president has ever ordered the complete defiance of an impeachment inquiry or sought to obstruct and impede so comprehensively the ability of the House of Representatives to investigate high crimes and misdemeanors. In all of this, President Trump has acted in a manner contrary to his trust as president and subversive of constitutional government, to the great prejudice of the cause of law and justice, and to the manifest injury of the people of the United States. And it goes on then to repeat the wherefore clause where he should be removed from office. That is the great news. We have a moment where a lot of us had pressed House leadership to move forward with impeachment. In fact, 70% of Democrats wanted that. That's the good news. The bad news is if the House Democrats believe these two articles of impeachment will anyway deter Donald Trump from future misconduct and crimes, they are kidding themselves. You know, Nadler talked about no one's above the law, and Schiff talked about we cannot allow him to cheat. If we wait, he'll cheat again. Well, let's be blunt. Two articles alone are not going to achieve either of those goals. We all know that Trump will not be convicted and removed in the Senate, meaning Trump will claim exoneration and even be more emboldened going forward. Thus, the articles of impeachment, the only thing they can do is to help us make a compelling case to our fellow Americans that I love the words yesterday of the Democratic lawyer Daniel Goleman, who said, Trump's conduct, quote, is a clear and present danger to our free and fair elections and to our national security, close quote. That's the case that must be made. And it's not going to be made in two articles of impeachment. It is a great start. The first article, I love it. It is so remarkably detailed. And the second one has some great language as well. And that's why I read it, because I am so happy with those two. I believe we need several other articles. I know we've had this discussion, and almost, I don't think with any exceptions, everyone who's called agrees with the idea of more articles. Why? The goal is to move a public opinion. By only having two articles, you're telling Americans who are not following closely, well, Trump's only done two things. They might be bad, but they're not horrific. We have to do our best to make it clear that Trump is so toxic. He is so deeply flawed and a criminal character that Republicans should want to move away from him. And yes, I know it's a long shot, but I can tell you this, two articles is a no shot. It's not going to move the needle to these two articles. It's going to get us worked up, and that's important. And maybe reach a few in the middle. Maybe a few. But we need other standalone articles. I believe we need one on bribery, very specifically. And what's remarkable today, I was stunned that bribery was not mentioned because the House Judiciary on Saturday put out a 55-page report. And in it, they defined certain terms, which I thought they were doing because they were going to use them in these articles. They defined bribery as this, quote, impeachable bribery occurs where the president offers, solicits, or accepts something of personal value to influence his own official actions, close quote. That's what Trump did. He solicited help that would help him personally in his re-election campaign when he talked to President Zelensky. And in exchange, he offered official actions, namely two, a meeting in the White House and releasing aid that Donald Trump personally withheld and didn't give anyone a reason. And we know why he did it. There are also 10 instances of obstruction of justice outlined in Robert Mueller's report. The report, to remind everyone, concluded that Mueller could not decide that the president did not clearly commit obstruction of justice. And when he testified on July 24, 2019, one day before Donald Trump picked up the phone and asked Zelensky and Ukraine to interfere in the next election, he was testifying in Congress. And he made it very clear there is a factual and legal basis to continue an investigation into whether Donald Trump violated obstruction of justice laws. In fact, to me, the best exchange was with Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee. She asked Mueller, does your report state there is sufficient factual and legal basis for further investigation of potential obstruction of justice by the president? Mueller's response, yes. Yes. He said under oath, there is a legal and factual basis to continue investigation. And don't forget, impeachment is simply a charge. You charge the president with obstruction. You highlight some of the counts, the strongest ones from the Mueller report, and make them a separate standalone article of impeachment. I also think there should be an article for emoluments clause violation. Right now it's being litigated in the court, but the Constitution clearly says a president cannot receive anything of value from a foreign state. Trump is doing that. There's no dispute. At his hotels, foreigners are staying there to curry favor with him. That must be an article impeach it, and let the Republicans go on record saying it's okay for a president to profit off the White House. Let Americans see that's what they're about. Let them defend it. That's what I want. And I also think there should be a dedicated article on campaign finance violations. 2, one is Donald Trump, and this is a no-brainer, and I don't understand why this is not an article. I mean, there's no defense to me on this one. Soliciting something of value from the Ukrainian president, namely opposition research, that's what Trump wanted, on its face is a felony because it's a knowing and willful violation of campaign finance laws, which bar anybody from soliciting. You don't have to get it, just soliciting help from a foreign national. Doesn't matter if he's president or not. If you ask a foreign national to give you something of value, and you do that knowing and willfully, and Donald Trump did that because he knows the law now because Mueller talked about it when his son sat down with the Russians, said, I love it, give me your dirt. He knows it's a crime. George Stephanopoulos talked about it with him when he interviewed him in the summer. He knows, and he still did it. That's a felony. On its face, that is a felony. It's all the elements for crime. And I also think there should be another article on Donald Trump's earlier campaign finance violations on the hush money payment, where Michael Cohen is in prison right now for being part of that scheme to pay 2 women who Trump had affairs with to silence them, to keep their stories out of the press in the closing days of the election. And if you wonder, can you impeach somebody for actions they did before they're sworn in? Yes, you can. How do I know this? In 2010, federal judge Thomas Portowis Jr. was impeached and removed by the U.S. Senate. 2010. This is not 1810, 2010. Why? One article impeachment dealt with his activities before he was even sworn in as a judge with lying and taking bribes. And that was one of the reasons they impeached him and removed him. Who was his lawyer, by the way? The judge's lawyer, who argued that can't be the case. You can't impeach him for that. Jonathan Turley, the guy from last week. Who was the guy who prosecuted him in the Senate? Adam Schiff, and got that conviction. Look, the benefits of including these other articles ensures Americans who are not paying attention, or who are paying attention, to see the full scope of Donald Trump's wrongdoing. It sends a message to Trump and to future presidents that all of his conduct is impeachable. We don't know if you're going to be removed, but you're going to be impeached. You're going to be in history books forever. And also, here's the political part. It makes Republicans vote on article after article after article and say it's okay for Trump to commit crimes. It's okay for him to profit. It's okay for him to violate campaign finance laws and commit bribery. Arguing these two is much easier. Arguing 5 or 6 articles of impeachment that are detailed about misconduct, let them go on record and say each and every one of those is okay. Or maybe you actually peel a few off. Not enough to remove them. That's not going to happen. But we're not trying to remove them because we can't. Because our system, it's a rigged system in the Senate. It is a rigged trial in the Senate. So that's where we are. Limiting it, though, to abuse of power and obstruction, to me, sends a message these are the only actions of Trump worthy of removal. And that's not the case. You know, that White House Judiciary lawyer yesterday, Barry Berkey, said some words that I think we must all heed. He said, if in fact President Trump can get away with what he did again, our imagination is the only limit to what President Trump might do next. And I fear that the limited scope of this makes that more possible. Because the fight is not in the Senate. The fight is with the American public going into 2020 re-election. Because it's about beating him in the future. So, all right, well, perfect time right now. Folks, stick around. We have a lot of time for phone calls, but we have a guest right now earlier in our time, and I'm so happy to have him back on. Congressman Joe Kennedy, a Democrat from the 4th District in Massachusetts. Of course, my sister's favorite member of Congress, and he's running for the U.S. Senate in Massachusetts right now. Congressman Kennedy, how are you?
Dean, what's going on? How you been, my friend?
Fine. How is the Senate race going, first of all? Before I ask about impeachment, how's it going? Traveling around the Bay State there and chatting with people?
Yeah, listen, campaigns are an amazing opportunity to get out across the state to be able to listen to folks, to hear what's on their minds and their concerns, and to be able to carry a message with you about what I think this is about and the moment that we're in. And, you know, I think, Dean, central to this is, look, yes, they're pushing back on the hate and vitriol that comes out of the White House and Donald Trump every single day. But for an awful lot of folks out there, the folks that our society needs to center, to make sure that we are focused on and protecting the ability for people to make meat, the people that are struggling to get by, the poor, the sick, the suffering, immigrants, LGBTQ families, people suffering from mental behavioral illness. Those challenges began even before Donald Trump ever thought of running for office. And this opportunity that we are in, I think, is an opportunity to fight back against Trump, to show the true content and character. And I think if you look at it that way, this election becomes much more about us. It's about whether we as a society will fight for the content and the character and future of our country.
Right.
Because I have no doubt what historians will write about Donald Trump. No doubt. 50 years from now, 100 years from now, look, these are the moments we teach our kids about. You talk to them about Japanese internment camps. We talk to them about the story of the St. Louis, a ship that sailed from Europe carrying Holocaust refugees who came to our shores fleeing violence and persecution and were turned away.
Right.
And these moments of our greatest shame, and we say we're better than that. Well, we have the opportunity to be better than this and to show everybody across our country, everybody around the world, what it is the United States stands for, the country that we can be and the country that we are. And I'm excited to be able to go out there and fight for it over the course of the next year. So game on.
That's great. And obviously, people vote for candidates for various reasons, but things that touch them personally, I imagine, are the things that move them the most. And if it's their health care coverage, or if it has to do with jobs and opportunity and minimum wage being risen, and government programs that can help those who are less fortunate and need help. I want to talk to you about impeachment. I want to ask one thing, though, because I know Massachusetts, you're a unique state. You had a health care program there that predates the ACA. That was actually on some level the model for the ACA. Yep. But how much, I so want that Democrats who are running for president to talk about the fact that Donald Trump right now is in the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals arguing to end everyone's coverage for them and their family for pre-existing medical conditions, to go back to pre-ACA days, every benefit gone, charging women more for the same policy as men, to putting annual and lifetime caps back on policies, kicking kids off the policy. The list goes on and on and on. And I wish the 2020 Democrats, I understand the fights over paying for Medicare for all and what we should do, or should public option. That's important. But I wish they would conclude or begin by reminding Americans we gave them the ACA. That's our party. We gave them Medicare, and Donald Trump's in court trying to get rid of the ACA's benefits.
From your lips to God's ears, my friend. Listen, 100%. And I think, look, not to justify this or rationalize this, but one, you're right. Two, I think the reason why you're hearing that is every single Democrat on that stage, on any stage so far, believes in this country that you should get the health care that you need when you need it, period. Right. We might disagree a bit on how you do that and whether the best way to do that is through expansion of the ACA or a public option or a single payer program, and what the details of that are. Fine. Those are all legit debates. But at its core, it's about making sure that people get the care that they need when they need it. We are in the midst of a primary debate where you actually pick apart those differences to try to see who was the best steward of our party and our values and vision. And so that's kind of where we're at.
Right.
I do wish that this part of that debate would transition, because, well, the degree of difference between the Democratic candidates might be, there's some difference there. It is insignificant and inconsequential when compared to a Republican vision of healthcare in this country, yes, where they celebrated with champagne and a party in the White House Rose Garden about taking healthcare away from 30 million people, where they believe that people actually shouldn't be covered from pre-existing conditions. And yes, Donald Trump lies about that every single day. I'm sure you're going to be shocked to hear it.
Right.
Because they try to sit there and say that they are going to protect it. They're not. They're in court right now to take it away. And the fact is that there is a very real difference when it comes to the provision of health care. We had a hearing today in the Energy and Commerce Committee around Medicare for All. And I was there speaking with, asking questions to all of the witnesses that came forward, including a couple conservative economists who actually didn't disagree with what I had to say. And a couple of, I spoke with Pramila Jayapal and Debbie Dingell, two pioneers of this program of the single payer bill here, about what it actually means when we actually believe in this country that you should get access to care that you need when you need it, and that healthcare uniquely is a system we're all going to draw on. You're going to draw on it when you welcome a new child into this world, or you watch a loved one pass through it. And that if that's the case, then you want to make sure that that system's going to be there for your loved one, and that all of us are somebody's loved ones.
Right.
And if it's going to be there for mine, it should be there for yours. And that's the commitment that we can make. And comparing that to what Republicans put forth, because they don't have an answer for it, because what they've tried to do is nothing short of cruel when it comes to the vision of the federal government's role in healthcare. And I think, Dean, you point out that there's a reasonable chance that the defining issue of the presidential campaign is actually going to be healthcare again.
Yeah.
Depending on what an appeals court should come down on literally any moment. And then if this is appealed up to the Supreme Court, which everyone expects that it will be, when a Supreme Court rules on it in June, if parts of the Affordable Care Act are struck down, what that means as people then scramble to try to make sure that we do continue to try to make progress on that promise, that you get the care that you need when you need it. So I agree with you wholeheartedly and think that this is going to be an ever-increasing issue for in this campaign.
And I'm chatting with Congressman Joe Kennedy, and I'm going to get your reaction to impeachment. But one other issue, we've had a really robust conversation with people around the country about the economy. And we see these great numbers from jobs report just a week ago. And there's certain things that are built in there, like the 40,000 GM workers that were on strike and they come back in and kind of boost it. But then I have people calling from different parts of the country, various industries, saying they're struggling. And the trucking company just went out of business yesterday in Indiana, like a 35-year-old trucking company. I have people in retail and car sales. So I don't know what's going on because I see these big numbers. I see stocks going up. Wall Street's doing great. But I hear from average people who are struggling. And what are you seeing in your state?
Dean, you hear people are struggling because they are.
Yeah.
And that's the reality. Look, this is what the tension with the economic numbers that this administration doesn't want you to understand and doesn't want people to wrestle with. The fact that, look, you might have low unemployment numbers, but those low unemployment numbers, what do they say about somebody that's working 2, if not 3 jobs to try to make ends meet? What do they say about somebody that's now where the biggest issue around our state at the moment is the cost of housing? Because the people that power the city of Boston can no longer afford to live there. Mm-hmm. What does that say about the cost of childcare, where Massachusetts is one of 28 states, Dean, across our country, where the cost of early childcare from birth to 5 is more expensive than tuition at a public university?
Wow.
Where the cost across Massachusetts is $17,000 per child per year to try to get that child the early childcare that they need to enable a parent to go back to work to try to pay off a mortgage or rent. What does it say about the fact that if you are scraping by to make ends meet, that your employer isn't raising your wage, that your healthcare costs are going up, that your rent has drastically increased, that your childcare costs are beyond reach, that you've got a student loan payment because we now got $1.7 trillion in student loans on the backs of a generation, the likes of which we have never before seen or orchestrated or structured this way in an economy. We are essentially putting the entire burden of economic success for our next generation on the shoulders of that generation, rather than making investments for them in the long term. And so you see people come back and say, look, that's fine, but you know what? I'm working full-time. I'm driving Uber in the early hours before work, as my Uber driver this morning said, before he went off to work as a nurse.
Wow.
And that might be a couple extra bucks until your car breaks down. But Uber's not exactly giving you a 401k or health care. Mm-hmm. So you have an economy that has been shifted to empower corporations at the expense of an American family, and we need to shift it back. And that is a fight of our time, and one that I've been focused on, and I would love to be able to continue in the U.S. Senate.
That's great. And it's interesting what you're hearing from people as well, because I have people calling, and you see these headlines that the economy is the greatest ever, and CNBC will tout those as well. But let me get the last couple of minutes here on impeachment. So today, formally, 2 articles of impeachment have been introduced, one on abuse of power, one on obstruction of Congress. Do you think these will deter Trump from more wrongdoing? Because getting a removal from the Senate, we know it's beyond highly unlikely. It's almost impossible. But the goal is to hold him accountable on some level and to deter his conduct from the future. Is this enough with just 2 articles as opposed to 4 or 5 that articulate his other wrongdoing, from emoluments to campaign finance to one for just bribery?
Dean, I don't think there's any... I don't know if there's anything that will deter this president from additional wrongdoing as long as he's in office, right? I don't think words on a page, even for an impeachment resolution, even for articles of impeachment, even if they are voted on and approved by the House, even if you have Republican senators, even if in substantial numbers, if they vote for to remove him, if he's not removed, I don't think anything stops him from thinking that he can't do it again. We saw this. Remember, the substance of this call with the Ukraine, which is now the center of this controversy and leading to impeachment. You remember when it happened, right?
Yeah.
The day after Robert Mueller testified on Capitol Hill. The day after the press story said, "Hey, Mueller wasn't as compelling as he could have been, and so therefore the president's not going to be impeached on it." The next day, he calls up the president of Ukraine and essentially asks for the exact same thing what he asked from the Russians, which is a foreign government to interfere with in an election cycle by
engaging in by targeting his political opponent. That is exactly what he asked Russia to do when he asked them to start to go look at Hillary Clinton's emails, and he just did it. He did it the next day. And so, no, I don't think that there's anything we can say or do or any vote that we can make here in the House that's going to make him think twice, because I just don't think that's the kind of guy or president that he is. It is up to us, though, I think, for posterity's sake and for history, to be able to judge that this is going to be something that will go down and be written about as part of the legacy of Donald Trump. That because of the actions that he committed, because of his own deliberate choices, that he brought impeachment on himself. And yes, I think you and I have talked about this, I think he should have been impeached based upon what was related in the Mueller report. Yep. But at the very least, the fact that when it comes to our national security, that I think it is clear and it is unequivocal, and I think that the testimony has obviously been compelling. And I think whatever articles are there that will enjoy the most robust support, I think is the most critical thing.
Well, Congressman, thank you, my friend, for your time. I know you're on the floor of the House. You guys go back for votes shortly. But I wish you the best in your Senate campaign. Look forward to chatting with you in the future. And again, I think I said last time, we've got to try to do something, go up to Massachusetts and
come on up, my friend.
Watch a town hall. Yeah, and record it and make it a special on the show. All right, Congressman.
Let's do it.
Nice chatting with you. I appreciate it.
All right, my friend. Be
Take
well.
Care. You too.
Happy holidays.
You too. So, folks, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we have plenty of time. We don't have our next guest till 7:30 p.m., who is Jill Wine-Bank, a former Watergate prosecutor who everyone knows and loves from MSNBC. She'll be joining us around 7:30, but from now to then, it's all you. You're my guest. And so we'll take a quick break, come back, and just take phone calls for the next 50 minutes right here on the Dean Obeidallah Show after this.
Dean Obeidallah Show on Sirius XM Progress 127.